20 check marks. And I asked them how many of this you can check off your list. So then we know what kind of buying power you have. And then I just kind of explain every single one. What does that mean? And yeah.
I love that you brought it up again. And when you brought this up yesterday, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It's instead of just taking them through and saying, be ready to do these things, she's actually pulling in a recent offer she did get accepted, so that then she can put that buyer in the shoes of someone that just went through this, to be like, here's an actual offer that we just got accepted on a property that had 20 different offers, or whatever it is. And let me show you the tactics we used. And it's going to help the buyer better understand, because a lot of these ideas of waiving an appraisal or tightening deadlines, they're going to sound so foreign to them because they haven't bought a house in this type of market, that sometimes they're going to feel like, I'm not willing to do that. But when they see another buyer that was just successful do that, and you can walk them through that, I thought that was genius.
And then you do get the buyer, oh, okay, we can waive the appraisal. And then I have to go back explaining what does that actually mean when you do waive the appraisal, because I don't want them to be in a position where, oh, so now I have to bring in 40,000. I don't have that kind of money. So I asked them, get your finances in order, talk to the lender, know exactly how much your down payment is going to be, how much your closing cost is going to be. So when we write an offer, you know exactly where you stand.
What percentage of your buyers in that buyer consultation are leaning into the conversation versus out of the conversation of like, this is making me too nervous, I'm out?
I mean, if they want to buy a house, then they're ready and willing to listen. But if they're not motivated to buy a house and they live in their parents' basement, then they're like, well, maybe I shouldn't do this right now. But that's a different conversation. You know, the interest rates are low, so why is it good to buy now versus waiting? But once they start the conversation, they see the value of, oh, this makes total sense. I have a friend that has been trying for 6 months and didn't get their offer accepted. So
yeah, I think
they're pretty open.
Awesome. And I think one of my favorite coaches of all time taught me a great front conversation eliminates any back conversation. And this is a perfect example of that, of like, let's have the difficult conversations now. Because if you're having the conversations later in the game, a lot of times they make the agent the bad guy. Where if you have a great front conversation, the agent's the hero because we brought this to the forefront and we're going to navigate through it together, instead of having to be a surprise, which is brilliant how you're doing that. Joe, what can you offer into that?
Quick question.
Yep.
I went through you taught a class when I was being coached by
the file on this end.
guy. And I wonder if you're going to post this, like the 20 question thing. Is there anything like that I can go back and refer to?
Yeah, I have that sheet, so I can send it to you.
Okay.
If someone wants to know if you will share your form.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm happy to email it to you, and then you can email it to
Whoever wants it. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's really just a form that I went to a few classes or mastermind with other agents from out of state. And I just kind of took it a little bit and made it my own. And so.
Brilliant. And I encourage you guys to do the same when a top agent like this shares something like that. That's gold. But then also, out of respect, think through it and make it your own to some extent as well.
Okay.
Joe.
All right. So I think your presentation, your buyer presentation now is more critical than ever, because you have to get them. They have to understand what's going on in the market, and I'll use basically stories to compare the market right now to what the market was. Right. So we know the last year, I'll even say, we know the last year the market's been really hot, right? You can see that a lot of your friends, multiple offers and everything else. I will say that, in the last 3 weeks, it's even changed more. Now we're getting in a position where it's 30, 40 offers on properties. And, and then they're like, oh man. So then we go through that. And what Katerina said, you have to make sure that this is where I think it's your opportunity to be a professional, because this gives you your opportunity for you to build value with them, going over what's going on in the market and explaining all the pieces of this. And this is what we're going to do. And this is the reason why we're going to do it. We're going to try to put ourselves in the best position. So you've got things like timelines, you've got due diligence, whether you're going to do it or not, appraisal, whether you're going to waive it or not, how quickly you're going to close. Also making sure that they have the amount of money needed. Anyone who's trying to get a property right now, unless it's maybe some condo that is not that desirable or something, that's trying to get in with like only 3 or 5% available for funds, is unlikely they're going to buy a property. They're going to need, most likely, they're going to need probably I don't know, 12 to 20% to even buy a property, because most likely they're going to be waiving an appraisal that may come in anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 low. So they're going to need those extra funds. Don't even think about asking for closing costs. Home warranties, maybe, maybe not. So, I mean, there's just so many factors that go into the equation right now. And then I guess we're going to the next little thing is when you're writing those offers, you know, we talked about it's so important that you have those conversations with those agents too. You have the conversation. Now, a lot of times those agents, they're getting 30 or 40 offers. They don't want to have that conversation. So Katarina's got a little trick for that. My trick is I text them, I'm saying, hey, we want to write an offer. It's super strong, super aggressive. This buyer's lost out. They're willing to do some things that most buyers are not willing to do. Can I talk to you for 90 seconds? Just something, text like that. Most of the time like that, I can have that conversation with them. Because like, you know, and they're like, no, I don't want to. But you have to be able to get in there and be aggressive and talk to those agents, find what they need. What can you offer them? Do they need a rent back? I mean, what is it that you can do? And then you take all that and you put it in perspective going on the market. You just put someone under contract this past weekend. It was listed at 400. This also goes in. You need to know the market. You need to know value. This property was incorrectly listed. It was listed at 1,900 square feet. It was really 2,851 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So it was listed at 400,000. I knew if we waited till Monday where someone's going to figure out what I figured out. So we went in, we locked it up on Saturday, about 3 hours after the open house at 452. Okay. It's probably worth 480, 485. Okay. But because I knew the market and I knew what was going on, we were able to make that. And that was for them. I mean, we were 52,000 over. Here's what we did: 52,000 over list price, $10,000 non-refundable, no due diligence, waived appraisal. Right? That sounds crazy. It wasn't that crazy in this particular case, although those are the offers that are winning a lot of these deals. So that's the type of market it is. And so you have to educate your people and let them know this is what we're facing. And the last thing I'll say, that because a lot of times you could say, well, I don't want to wait. I'll just wait till there's more inventory that comes on the market. You know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you know what? There will be a little bit more inventory that comes on the market in the next couple of months. But right now we're at 500 homes on the market. And this is where it's important to know this. Like last week, 476 homes on the market active in Salt Lake County. Okay. When the market was starting to heat up back in 2007, right before it crashed, we were like 6,000 homes on the market. Okay. So even if we get 200-300 times more homes on the market is still going to be going up. So therefore, the prices that are happening right now, this is the way to get them. If they don't want to buy now, this is important for you to understand. The prices that are happening now, these prices are coming in 30, 40, 50,000 above list. By waiving appraisal, that's going to be your new high water mark. That's the new bar. That's where those pricing is going to be. And pricing from there may still go up, because we're not going to get to I don't think we're going to get to 3,000 homes on the market here anytime soon. So, I mean, that's basically.
Yeah. Even double, triple inventory we have now is a
Still low.
inventory shortage.
Yeah.
Right. We're not going to get to an over robust inventory for a while. To Joe's point, you look at a 10%, or for easy math, a 12% appreciation. Every month that goes by is a 1% appreciation that's happening, right? So what my big takeaway from Joe yesterday in this part of the conversation was how critical it is for us to be a master of the market. We need to be studying the market every single day. So, and this is why, is you think about a buyer in today's market, over 95% of the first offer that got accepted are actually getting through to closing right now. So it's really critical to get that offer accepted. And you think about a buyer's risk tolerance. So if a buyer's risk tolerance baseline is right here, and you start introducing the tactics that you need in this market, tight deadlines, waive appraisal, or some contingency around appraisal, all of a sudden their risk tolerance is going up, right? Everything you're suggesting, they're getting a little bit more nervous. The way to counteract their nerves around the market is to really flex your expert muscle and help them understand, like, yes, I'm asking you to do this tactic, their risk goes up, and then you show your expertise and it balances out their risk again. So it's not necessarily that tactics are more risky. It's not more risky because you have an expert navigating it with them. You have to balance that out in the conversation of, I'm introducing a riskier tactic that's going to get you to the front of the line, and my expertise is going to balance out your risk because I know the market better than anybody else. Does that make sense? Any other comments on that buyer consultation before we move into some actual tactics in writing the offer?
Yeah, so when I do write the offer though, even though the other offers waive the appraisal, I won't waive the appraisal unless I pull comps and then I have the conversation with my buyer. Based on my comps, this is probably where we're gonna come with the appraisal. So be prepared to come in with, $10,000, or let's just write in that you're gonna pay $50,000 over the appraisal if it doesn't cover purchase price. So yes, it's very critical that you know the market and you're doing that market analysis for them.
Yeah, and then the other thing about that, this goes like what you're saying, an expertise on that. Do you actually know the way appraisers look at comps, right? If your subject is a 2-story, you can't be comping that against a Rambler, right? Do you guys know all that? You got to know that, because if not, you can make some horrendous mistakes, right? So that goes into that kind of that knowledge about what you're doing and how to do that. And if you have questions, go talk to people.
Maybe even have a class, maybe even have an appraisal come and teach a class, because I think that they tweaked their way of doing the appraisals too with the low inventory. Just by looking at appraisals.
And
We have an appraiser. I actually have seen more appraisers use the crossover with regards to style,
Right.
2-story Rambler, because of the lack of inventory. So their choice is between
Going
choosing a
up further.
more recent sale and a different style, or going back a year when it's an invalid. So it's just crazy.
Yeah.
One quick comment around appraisers I think is really interesting as well, is when lending was under scrutiny in a big way, appraisers were actually forbidden to have the conversation with the agent. When we're actually seeing that come back around, where before an agent would call an appraiser and they say, we're not permitted to have the conversation, or they would avoid any conversation at all with the agent. We're actually seeing particularly good appraisers right now. They're realizing the expertise of the agent in the transaction, and they're actually open to the conversation now. If you see something like a red flag with their appraisal, or if you're like, hey, but I didn't see this or this comp in there, help me understand why you didn't include those. So if you kind of grew up in the business over the last couple of years where they really pushed back on that conversation, we're finding that they're more open and receptive to that conversation, particularly if they're a good appraiser now. So don't shy away from having that conversation if you're questioning the value that's coming back on that appraisal.
Yeah, and look for ways. If it came in, because your buyer's going to be, the loan they're going to get is based upon the appraised value, right? And so if that thing comes in super low, they're going to have higher MI, right? If they don't, all these things. So look for things in the appraisal. If you know there are issues, that something that can change it. There are errors, I would say, in virtually almost every appraisal that you can find. And when you find them, a lot of times you can change that value, because they're like, oh yeah, that's incorrect. Okay, if you change that and this, what does that do? Okay, that brings it up by 5,000. It makes a difference, and it makes a difference in how that buyer feels too, in terms of like, oh man, this appraisal came in 30,000. Oh well, it's only now 20,000, right? So all those little things.
So let's shift our conversation to some tactics. So I'm going to bring up a couple different things within an offer to start our conversation. And you guys tell me kind of how you approach that tactically. And if it's something that you don't do something with, you can pass, but I kind of jotted down a couple things. So we've said the term tight deadlines a couple times. So walk us through what does tight deadlines mean to you, and how do you do that strategically?
So I've done the inspection or the due diligence 3 to 4 days. And I just kind of present, it's not more for the inspection part, but we want to make sure that we get the title report and there's nothing there that, the buyer is committing to purchasing as is. Then I call the lender and I ask, how quick can you get the appraisal back if we order today or tomorrow?
Yep.
And then based on what they tell me, that's the day that I put in. Same thing with how quick can you close? Of course, I call the listing agent and I say, I can do this. Would this work for you, or do you need more time? We can do the tight finance and appraisal deadline, but we could do a 45-day closing if that's what your seller needs.
Yeah.
So whatever works for you.
Notice, I think that's a critical piece. Don't do it and then call your title officer and lender and be like, hey, by the way, I need you to hit these deadlines. Like, that's a quick way to burn that relationship. You have to view these people as partners in your business. So I love that you're calling to be like, hey, and they respect you, right? They see the amount of business you're doing. So they're like, okay, if she's going after it, I'm in. Where if it's someone that you're constantly circling through people or whatever, and they feel like your relationship's at risk, they're probably less likely to go to bat for you. So this conversation is important there, and making sure you have a team around you that's going to accomplish that.
Yeah, when you say that means too, like, it was Missy, Amicus, or I use Leslie Amicus, like they know what we need all the time and they're willing to do it. And then the lenders we use the same thing. they're going to pick up that phone on Saturday or Sunday because I'm trying to get that thing locked up before Monday, where they say they're going to look at offers. So that lender you have, needs to be able to pick up that phone and answer your calls on Saturday, Sunday, or whenever you need it in order to get you the info you need. And you have to have, that's another thing, you have to, because now we're talking about large earnest money amounts and everything like that, you better have confidence in those people and that lender and how they're, and working through that. They know they're going to do it, or they will fix it if it doesn't work. Because all of a sudden you start having $10,000. I had an agent on us, we needed a 3-day extension because the appraiser went AWOL for literally a whole week. This was a buyer. And so we needed a 3-day extension because it was not the lender's fault. It was just like, and they were calling the AMC, and this guy, we got a good deal on the property. We still paid more, but we probably still got a good deal on the property. So they're like, well, if you can't close, we're just gonna, take your $5,000 and we're gonna resell it. And so that was fun. So finally, most people can't do this. I actually then finally went to the agent. I threatened the agent, said, here's the thing, I will take it out myself. I will take it out myself if so. And we ended up settling on $2,000 for a 3-day extension, which is stupid, right? But you gotta like really be confident in the people you're working with. And even that, things are gonna happen that you're gonna have to deal with, especially, and so you get people that are now getting greedy and they're acting in ways that just, it's like, oh man, that's just not cool. But you still have to deal with it because you have to protect your client and work through it.
So let's talk about earnest money for a minute. It's interesting. I was on a call earlier today where we were reviewing some things, and in the last couple months, I can't remember which month it was. In 1 month, we got 68 $1,000 earnest money checks deposited into our trust account. So, we all know that consistently that's what people think is the earnest money amount. We're seeing that change right now. So let's talk about two things with earnest money. Like, what are you seeing as or recommending as a normal earnest money if you have some set rule around it? And then let's talk about refundability of that earnest money. Are you building in a partial non-refundable, a full non-refundable? Walk us through kind of some thoughts around that.
Yeah, so I usually recommend 3 to 4% of earnest money, and half of it will become non-refundable upon acceptance if we go that route, or it will become non-refundable after the due diligence. However, we end up structuring their offer. I'm never going to write an offer without calling the agent, find out how many offers they have. If they have 3 offers, well, I'm going to do the due diligence and I'm going to get the result.
Exactly.
But if they have 50 offers, then I'm waiving everything, so I'm making everything hard upon acceptance, or a lot of it.
And that's a big pill for some buyers to swallow. Of wait, the minute they sign this is 5,000 of this is gone. And so helping them understand that, for us that are doing this several times a day, they're like, yeah, this is normal. For some of those people, it's going to be pit in my stomach of oh, are we ready to say goodbye to this $5,000 today? And we hope this worked out, but we don't know, right? So helping to coach them through that is a big deal, but it's how you get your offer to set apart. So let's say 50 offers, maybe only 10 of them are you going to implement some strategy that you instantly cut out 90% of the competition, and now they're now analyzing between a couple offers of being really strategic and aggressive.
Yeah, so we've done stuff. It's all you have to talk to the agent because it's all situational dependent, right? If what does that agent need? What do they want? And you have to have the conversation. A lot of times we'll do something, it could be 5,000 or 10,000, and sometimes it could be a $1,000 or $2,000. If it's 5,000, let's say, at acceptance, 2,000 is non-refundable. And then at the end of due diligence, the other 3 is non-refundable. And the best way to do is you just have to address that incredibly upfront with your client and go, here's the deal. If you don't like this property after 2 days or whatever, you're losing $2,000. Are you okay with that? But I need to tell you, if you're not okay, we're probably not even going to get the chance to look at it and do the due diligence because we're not going to get our offer accepted. And that's you're not twisting their arm. You're just telling them the reality of the situation. And that is the reality. So
this weeds out the buyers too that we saw last year, that they felt hyped up in the market and they'd be like, I'm just gonna hurry and get this house under contract. And then as they get home and talk about it, they're like, why did we put a house under contract with 3 bedrooms in it? We have 6 kids.
Yeah.
Right. And so they thought they had this time to get out, but this weeds out those people I am a legit serious buyer in this market ready to go.
Yeah.
Which saves your time. Your guys' time is valuable. It's important to find out they got to partner with you on going aggressively after the deal.
100%.
And I do go to the extent of explaining that because we have non-refundable earnest money, they're probably not going to be flexible with any repairs. Even though we do have a due diligence period and you come and it has meth and radon and all of it, like that, you're losing that money because they're probably not going to do anything about it.
Yeah,
Now,
right.
there's some sellers that they want to be right and they want to be fair
Mhm.
and they want to work with you, but some will say, no, I'll take your money and go back on the market
Yeah.
to the other 32.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's all about how you present it too, right? Like if you talk to any savvy person and say, think of the worst deal you've ever had in your life, whether it was in the car, a partnership, a business, if you could go back and someone gave you the opportunity to spend $5,000 to get out of that deal and walk away, would you do it? And they'd probably say, oh, in a heartbeat, now knowing what I know, I would do that. So like in the event that something catastrophic comes up with the house, like a meth result or something like that, they've got to look at it that way of like, oh, we just spent $2,500 to avoid that deal, that bad deal, not, oh, I lost $2,500. It's got to be, they've got to look at it as like, that was money well spent, that we went after it, we went aggressive, and we avoided a big problem for $2,500. Let's go do it again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So one thing, so the interesting part about the two, I was just thinking about this, like, and having those consultations and having all these things, you're still going to run into buyers that, it's funny, when a lawyer was on my team, you used to use the phrase, they have to bump their head a couple times, right? So a couple times they may not want to be as aggressive as you think they need to be in order to get it. They don't get a couple properties. All of a sudden they're like, it's like a switch changes and they want to be more aggressive than I want to be.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden you have that conversation. You're like, whoa. I don't think we need to do that. We don't need to like give them $200,000 earnest. No, you know, or what, you know what I mean? So, but sometimes there's a process for them and that they have to, even though they're hearing what you're saying, until they experience, oh man, this property, we won 42 offers that they lost out on. And this is what, and then you call the agent, you find out what was the offer you accepted and you tell them this. And then you go back and talk to your buyer. And then when you know, oh, the next time, oh, that's what we need to do. So
Brilliant tactic. So let's talk about the other thing we talked about real quick. I know we're about out of time, but there's a couple other key points I think are really critical that I want to talk about is yesterday we talked about, and this is what we believe to be true before this market, was the importance of having a voice-to-voice conversation with the listing agent prior to them looking at the offer, right? So you guys brought up some interesting tactics. I think Katerina particularly brought up some interesting tactics that you brought in because we saw that everyone's heard of the buyer letter to go with it, but you've actually incorporated video in 2 accounts. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so when I call the agent, everybody's calling, everybody's texting or emailing. I send a video and introduce myself. First, I have a conversation. Then after the conversation, I send a video. Just put a face to my name and this is who I am and blah, blah, blah. Very simple, very short so they can watch it. And I feel like that has helped a lot to just have that kind of connection.
I think that's
She's
brilliant.
attractive too. She wasn't as attractive, it might not be expected.
I don't think that's the
She's
case.
professional.
I don't think that's the case because I stole that idea from a guy that sent the video. I'm like, okay.
You just introduced
Hey, can I say something?
Yeah, this is Katerina. I just put an offer together for 123 Main Street. Just wanted I just wanted to put a face to my name. We're excited to work with you. I hope that you can get our offer accepted. I want to make your job easy, make a smooth transaction and get it to close.
I think that's brilliant.
Just whatever. And if I talk to him something or her, something about that transaction, then I'll bring that out.
The fact is, they may not even watch it, but the fact that it came to them, it's kind of like, they see like, oh, what's this person's like, it's setting yourself apart. We'll do letters, we'll have them send pictures. We'll do that. I haven't done the video thing. I'll probably end up doing
I
that.
think the letters are still great. I love the
Handwritten, not typed.
The board had a
Handwritten.
whole thing about the letters though.
What's that?
The board, there was a whole talk about buyer letters.
Oh, what?
I think it was listing agents shouldn't require it, more so than buyer's agents.
Also in the buyer letter, there are things you cannot include, right? I saw these pictures you have up on the wall and like identifying yourself and fair housing and things like that. That's what they're looking at.
One of the things, and Eric, you can chime in here if you want. One of the things that I think is really important is there's certain things that we can't say as agents, but our clients are not held to those same standards. So like a client in a buyer letter can say, we're really excited about this. We can see our kids going to the school. It's a great family neighborhood or whatever it is, because it's coming from the buyer direct and they're signing it, other than a letter from the agent saying, my clients are looking for a family neighborhood and things like that. That is against fair housing,
Right.
right?
Can I chime in?
Go ahead, Eric.
So the letters right now are highly discouraged because of fair housing rules. So as a general rule, I'd stay away from the letter. That does not preclude you from in your email or text saying what the buyers do like about the property. And just so you know, buyers and brokers, or excuse me, selling agents and brokers are getting more particular. I actually have had phone calls asking about agents in our office who have presented offers. So they're calling me to find out about you guys.
Last offer did.
That is a bit, I think that actually works in our favor in that instance, because we know there's a lot of agents out there that frankly shouldn't have real estate licenses, in my opinion. So I think that plays to our favor. I'm going to do a little bit more digging on the letter piece.
It's a National Association of Realtors.
We use the
topic.
letter with my team a lot. I think it's, but we have the client write it direct
Yeah,
instead
exactly.
of us write it, which is a big deal. But let's look into this a little bit to make sure that we're not putting ourselves at risk. But I do think it plays, it tugs on heartstrings if it's done correctly directly from the client instead of you.
And handwritten and hand signed.
Yeah.
Focus on the.
I would place the letter with the video from the client as well. Now, that's not something that the seller can actually physically hold and see, but that's an easy forward.
This was the next piece I thought was brilliant, is number one is you sending a video. And I think your script is brilliant. One of the things if any of you have come to my negotiations class, one of the things I talk a lot about is the assumptive close. Is in the video, I would use some assumptive close. Hey, you and I are going to be working together through this transaction. Like before it's even accepted, that's an assumptive close, right? We're going to be working together. I wanted to make sure that you and I are building a relationship because we're going to get this deal to the finish line. That is an assumptive close that subconsciously you're telling them, oh, I'm already committed to this person, if that makes sense. And then the follow-up piece I thought was really smart was an actual video from your clients of like, this is why we love the house or whatever it is. Because even though the listing agent may not have an emotional tie to the house, their clients do have an emotional tie to the house. If that makes sense.
Right. And then when you're talking about your client, as you're having that conversation with the agent, be specific about things, right? People talk in general, I get all this, my listings all the time, I get calls, oh yeah, great buyer, but what do you mean by that? So say something like, great, you know what, like they have over 800 credit, they've got amazing credit, and they're putting $98,000 down, right? Like that's specific, like that, rather than saying, oh, they're gonna put a lot of money down. No, specifically what it is, because that makes it more memorable and it allows you to like, that they know that you know what's going on in the transaction, right? And so, and then also you're, in a sense too, like Katerina, you said it too, and we're doing the same thing. Not only are you selling your client to them, you're selling yourself to them too, right? Like your expertise and what you do and your experience, because they know, so there's got to be a way for you to work that into the conversation as well. We will guarantee we'll get this across the finish line. Here's, when working this market, we understand the dynamics of what's going on. And so we have those conversations so that it's that to sell, and then have your lender, if you need to, have your lender call too. We've had such like that. And so it all goes into the equation.
So prep your closing statement real quickly. It makes it sound like we're in court. Prep your closing remarks. And real quickly, I want to make two quick comments, and then we're going to let Joe and Katerina share their last little couple thoughts, and then we're going to close out. The last thing that was on the agenda to talk about, but we ran out of time, but I think it's really important just to make a quick comment around, is now going through this process, how do you generate additional business from this? So two things specifically out of that came to mind that we talked a little bit about yesterday is number one is if there's a listing in a neighborhood that got 30 to 40 offers, that means, or let's say 30 offers, that means 29 families did not get that house. And so if you need to take the opportunity, in my opinion, to go do some door knocking, circle prospecting, mailers, to help tell the story in the neighborhood of, hey, even if they're not your clients, there's 29 families just got told no that are wanting to move into your neighborhood that are all likely willing to pay over fair market value for your home. would you be interested in either a conversation about listing your home, or a lot of times if you want to do a softer close, it's that house is now under contract and is likely to get a close in the next couple of weeks. Would you like me to follow up with you in 2 weeks to let you know what that home closed for? Is in your, what's that?
Sorry, it's a strong story and create inventory. Don't sit on your hands and wait around. Create inventory. It's a market is the strongest conversation you can go into right now. So especially local.
Yes, and even if you missed out on the house, don't miss out on the opportunity for the conversations you created just by being in the running for that house. The other thing is if you are the one that got your offer accepted, I would prep, and your client's going to think you're a hero in that moment. Get very specific client testimonials of not just how great you were, that you showed up and that you were friendly. That's all great, but specifically how you went to bat and negotiated for them in a highly competitive market. And then use those and tell that story out, because every one of your buyers probably for the rest of this year is going to be in a very competitive nature, that they need to hear more than just you're a fun agent, which that doesn't mean don't be a fun agent, but you need specific, don't hesitate to give some direction on what you want from a client testimonial about how you negotiate better than anybody else and get that offer accepted in a very competitive market. Because now you're taking that story to set up your next campaign that will both work for getting your next buyer and your buyer consultation, but can also be included in your communication with that next listing agent of like, hear what the buyers are saying about me going through the transaction. Because I've done this several times over the last couple months, and getting more buy-in from the listing agent about choosing your offer over everybody else's. Katarina, ladies first. Joe, close us out.
Well, so I was going to go actually with when you go in details, when you're making the offer with the agent, not only do I just say how great my buyer and how qualified they are, but I also go and they're very well educated. So you're not going to get one of those buyers who's going to send you a 20 items repair list. They know the sellers are not doing anything right now. So unless the house is shifting and the foundation is, falling apart, then we're not going to have any issues there.
Really?
So I find that listing agents kind of like, oh, okay, I don't have to deal with, change the light bulb.
You prefix the problem for the listing agent. I think that's brilliant.
Mhm.
So I would say two things. One is that you hinted on before is the word future pace. So you want to future pace everything you possibly can in this transaction, because it's getting more complicated and more strict and more risky and more stressful. So you want to future pace every possible problem during that buyer presentation that you can, okay? The second thing is then this is your opportunity now for you to become a better agent, hone your skills, and understand about value, understand about negotiation, understand all about all these little different things that honestly were not as important like a couple years ago, right? When you could understand, okay, well, just put the offer in and we're going to put it in and get it accepted and we'll figure it out, right? Well, now the offers that are getting accepted are people that understand what's going on in this given situation. How do I get my offer accepted based upon what's going on this house?
Brilliant.
I got a quick question. How are you guys handling contingencies? How are you advising your people that have to buy, sell? I've had it. I don't know. I'm having issues with that, and I'm at the point where I'm advising them like, look, be prepared to make a second move. I mean, the stress that they're going to have is, I'm almost leaning towards just getting them sold, getting them a transition place, and then buying another one. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So Laud, is it Laud?
Yeah.
Yo.
Hey, well, for instance, we have a guy this week. We're going up in Camas on a property. And so we've already tipped them off that hey, they actually have a place to go, but we're saying, look, we're going to try to see if we can get you under contract. We actually just closed 2 contingencies last week, end of last week, with buyers. It may be getting a little harder to do that now. Obviously, we came in and we did non-refundable earnest money out of the gate completely. Right. Even though there were properties under contract, so there was some risk involved in there. But the other thing is, look, you got a listing. We already tell that person in Camas, look, we feel this listing is going to be hot. If necessary, we'll get you a 60-day rent back. We know a 60-day rent back is the max that most lenders are going to agree to based upon the owner-occupied programs, and that gives us the flexibility. Hey, maybe, if we get to the end where all the earnest money is hard, or maybe earnest money is hard at the beginning and they just want to, change out earnest money if they need to. You can get deals done that way. But a 60-day rent back, once they've closed, you don't have a contingency.
Yeah.
You're going to be incentivized to do something. So that's how we're handling it.
Yeah, I did the 60-day rent back on my last listing. Fortunately we only needed like 2 weeks or something, which was really nice.
What time you do?
Yeah.
But I definitely, I mean, we wrote 7 offers for that client, and they did get it accepted with the contingency, but it was, you know, every other we had. Oops, sorry. It was closed. It was going to close in like a week or two, right? I'm just starting to like see the writing on the wall and how difficult that's going to be for those sellers if they need to go buy again. And I'm just wondering, you know, we can get the rent backs, we can get those things. I'm just wondering, at what point do we start having that conversation if we're future pacing buyers to then start future pacing our sellers and saying, okay, look, the sale, that's going to be easy. And we can put these things into place to where you're going to feel pretty good about it, right? You're going to feel good about the price, right? You're going to sell your house for the highest you've ever sold it in history, period. You're welcome, right? But ultimately, that's not our biggest concern right now. Our next concern is like, where do you go? And we can put some things into place, but there's going to be a little bit of limbo, you know, from the time we list it to maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the fact where you don't have a place to go and you're getting your butt kicked in the market. At what point do we future pace the sellers? Like 60 days may not be enough.
Well, I'll say that right now. When we talk about that, I'll say, look, we're going to get you a 60-day rent back. If by chance we can't do that, I mean, I'm hoping it's fairly unlikely that we're going to get to the end of the 60 days, because you figure once we're into that contract, we have some earnest money non-refundable, we can actually go and hopefully get a deal done, which really probably gives us 75 days to get a deal done in a sense, right? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right about
Do
right.
you have another option? Like, I mean, it would be very unlikely, Mr. Seller, that we're going to end up in a position like this. But if I didn't bring it up as a possibility, I'm not doing my job. So do you have a possible place to go if by chance we can't do this in the unlikely event we can't get this to roll the way we need it to roll? And just address it up front, because I mean, you have to. But I mean, I think the 60 days, you're going to, I mean, you could be writing a ton of offers, and you know, and if they need to, then at some point they may just have to go rent.
This goes back to the conversation that Katerina really hit on at the beginning of this, is how important that buyer consultation is. If they're the type of buyer that's going to get aggressive, lean into the tactics, lean into your expertise, they're more than likely going to get something under contract and not have a problem. If they're of the category of, hey, we want to sell our house at top dollar today, but by the way, we want to buy a bargain, they're going to run into a problem.
Right.
The other, so I think the 60-day rent back is a great strategy. The other thing to consider right now is we're fortunate that even though we have an interesting market right now, very low inventory, we also find that the majority of people have a lot of equity, either in cash or in their home right now, where for some people that their jobs aren't at risk, it may make more sense for them to go buy and then move and then sell. And a lot of people have the capacity to do that. They just don't, because they're not in the investment world and the real estate world, sometimes they don't create that mental path for themselves. But we need to paint that as a possible or a potential path for them. And some of them will be like light bulb moment of like, oh yeah, let's just go that route. That way it takes the stress off us and we're going to be okay. Right? It sounds silly to us that are in the game, but sometimes we just need to have the conversation and it's a light bulb moment for them.
Well, and what you said, I mean, if you get a buyer that's like, or a seller and buyer, let's say they sell and buy, and they're like, but you know, I have to get this amazing deal on this other property and everything else. You start hearing that, you just have to address it. You get that elephant in the room. You got to talk about it and understand. Here's the other thing: if people have been doing this, right, you got a sale here. Once they start seeing what's happening on their listing, they're like, oh, we got 30 offers. Yeah, exactly. So you know, when we go buy, it's going to be the same thing, right? You understand, like, this is going to happen on. Then all of a sudden, they start to understand. But I mean, yeah, you can't, like, if they're hell bent on like, I need to get, you know, do this in some way. I mean, they need to understand the reality. And if they can't play in the reality of the game, I mean, you guys can't work with them.
And have the right expectation to begin with. I mean, if they're looking for a house that it doesn't exist, then 60-day lease back is not going to help them.
Right, exactly.
So we've already read over time. How many of you got value in this conversation? I mean, this was gold. What triggered this is I think it was actually Alicia that sent me a text. I can't remember if it was you or someone else that said, hey, can we put together a class around how to get our buyers accepted to this market? Was it you or was it someone else? Take credit. if it wasn't you. Oh, was it? But anyway, that's what triggered this. So if there's something you want us talking about as an office, that we can bring some experts up in front of the group to share. Let's keep this going right now. Let's keep getting better as a group. But let's give a quick round of applause to these guys that just gave us that knowledge. To wrap up, we talked about it before. We do have Valentine's Day cookies for you guys just to show our appreciation. I know it's a small way to show you how much we appreciate and love you guys. But just so you know, every morning, me and the rest of the leadership team, we meet every morning and constantly, every morning, part of that conversation. We don't have cookies every morning. Now you just obligated me for cookies every morning, Joe. But we do talk about how incredible you guys are and how fortunate we are to get to work with this caliber of agents. So thank you guys. The one thing I could ask you in return today is if there's an agent that you're friends with in our office that did not lean into this conversation today, please send them a text and invite them to come to the next team meeting because they are missing out on this level of conversation. But that would help us. I want to create that energy back here as we're moving back to live team meetings. But thank you guys. Jess, where do they get their cookies? Do we want to
Right
take these
here,
up front?
yes.
I think that would be a good
Yeah,
idea.
we'll take them up there.
Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a great week. Family reunion next week's going to be awesome.